Dena DeFazio, and I am here with a couple of my colleagues, John and Connie, and we are going to do a follow-up interview regarding the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact it's had on, each of us and Barclay Damon for the Historical Society of the New York Courts. And if everyone could just introduce themselves and, mention where you are, that would be great.
Sure, Dena, I'm Connie Cahill, the managing partner of the firm. I'm located in our Albany office, and I am formerly a public finance lawyer.
I'm John Langan, and I'm a chair of the firm and formerly a business litigator. And I operate out of the Syracuse office, and I'm broadcasting from lovely Cazenovia Lake.
Nice. And also, I'm an associate at Barclay Damon's Albany office and practicing in the healthcare and human services area. So I had the opportunity to speak with both of you last summer, almost a year ago, strangely enough. Seems like not possible that it could be that long. And I'm just wondering, I guess, how are things going since then? What's different? What's the same?
I think what's different is, we're all much more comfortable. We've all had such great news out of the CDC in the state of New York, Connecticut, and Massachusetts about the relaxation of COVID rules. But I do remember talking to you last July, and while the stress level may have come down a titch between, March of 2020 and July, it was still a really stressful time. We weren't sure what clients were going to do. We weren't sure what was going to happen with the economy. There was a lot of uncertainty. And some of that uncertainty has gone away. And so you can see people taking a breath and getting back to normal life and normal way of practicing law. It's a much better place than it was certainly last March of 2020 and even July of 2020. And yeah. John, from your perspective?
Feels different.
Yeah, very similar, Connie. I would just add that I feel like we don't know the full impact of it from a year ago till now, because I think I think post-traumatic stress is maybe too strong a word, but something. We've all been through something collectively that the consequence of which is going to play out in the next couple of years in our psyche and our practice and our relationships. And I feel like we're at the front end of that part of it. And it's just so odd. It's surreal in a way. And it's everything Connie said. It's much more hopeful. We feel like we're on the backside of the car accident, but we're all kind of shaken up by the accident.
Yeah, I think I would definitely agree that I have similar feelings and thoughts about it. In particular, John, when you mentioned post-traumatic stress, I recently was running some errands, and all the signs have calmed down, about wearing masks. And it says, if you've been vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask, which that's great. And all I could think was that, I can't imagine not wearing a mask. It was so strange to me. And I'm vaccinated, but I'm still wearing my mask because we're all in this weird position of do you trust the people who have been saying for a year that this isn't real, or that, they don't have to wear a mask, and now all of a sudden, I don't know, COVID doesn't seem like an honor system kind of thing to me. So the reason I say that is because it's that fear that I never had before, right?
Right.
It's really interesting.
It's so different, and there are people all over the spectrum in the country, but also in the firm about, they were extremely careful. They followed all the CDC guidance. They wore a mask, they sanitized their hands. And then we had other people who were not afraid of COVID, who really wore their masks only when absolutely required to, like in the office, who really weren't worried about sanitizing their hands, continue to go to restaurants. And we have to make sure that we appeal to both sides of that coin when we come up with rules for the office.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. And then one other thing that before we really get into the meat of our conversation about reopening and those kinds of things, since the time that we last spoke, there were also, we had changes in roles, right? So Connie, when we spoke last time, you're the deputy managing partner, now you're the managing partner. And John, you were the managing partner, now you're the chair. So I'm wondering what those transitions have been like in a time where there's things changing all the time on top of your big changes, right?
Yeah. So I'll go first because I'm gonna make, probably embarrass John, because of John's planning and attention to detail and generosity and sharing and ensuring that I really had 3 years to get a full view of what he's done, what he does on a day-to-day basis from the 100,000-foot level as well as down in the ground level, and his continued generosity post-transition, where I frequently go to him with questions. What do you think about this? This is where I'm going. Do you agree with that direction? And he's just been very generous with his time and his advice. And so from my perspective, it's gone well. Thankfully, we're a very strong firm and have really good policies and admin team in place. So that also helped. But really, it was John's leadership on this issue that made this transition go as well as it's gone. There's no doubt. And I think everyone would acknowledge that in the firm.
Very kind. Very kind. And I would just say, Dena, Connie's exceeded expectations. I hear that from everybody. Not that they were particularly low, but she's really killing it. She's really killing it. And so we haven't missed a beat. Connie we talked at year end and she said, will people still go to you after, will I try to undermine, kind of in parenting, they call it splitting, mom says no, dad says yes, or whatever. Sure. And I said, no, because we've been so firm in our messaging and you're so equipped to do the job. And you'll be shocked at how fast the power transfers, how it's how people are wired to go where the decisions are made and the answers can be made, assuming the person is a welcoming, smart, respected person. And it was like a switch flip, boom, overnight. I was afraid I was going to have to answer a lot of, what does Connie think? What does Connie think? And I was advised that would be part of what I would have to do by other managing partners, and I haven't had to do it once. The shift was immediate, and I tried to be careful to facilitate that and not do anything to undermine. And Connie's done a great job with it. So that transition has been great on the managing partner side, and on the chair side, I'm just figuring it out as we go in a good way. It's like more narrow. I appreciate having the day-to-day operations of the law firm turned over after 20 plus years, and keeping my nose out of that, and then being assigned to special things from Connie that I'm good at and like doing. But it's still an adjustment. To COVID, Dena, for the purposes of the Historical Society, one thing I would say that's so interesting, and this is broader than just me and my position, but I feel like, there's people who write about it, but I think COVID was an accelerator in many, many ways. We all know that, in terms of, getting partners into technology or changing industries. Or, if somebody was in a bad partnering relationship, it accelerated the end of that relationship because they were stuck together. Mm-hmm. If someone was in a strong relationship, it was made stronger from COVID. And for me, this is terrible for all the sadness and all the tragedy, but COVID was an incredible gift for my transition because it was disruptive. So, leading into it, I had done the same thing for 20 years. And all of a sudden, I wasn't doing the same thing at all. Before I, at all. I was in a position where everything was upended. And when everything's upended, it makes little things like, leave the managing partner job after 20 years. So what? Because, geez, bigger things are happening. So the disruption in the world and in our lives was really helpful at putting in perspective and helping me get through the change of the position. And so I feel lucky. I come out of this whole thing feeling incredibly appreciative and lucky and thankful to a lot of people in a lot of different ways in my life from the last 18 months.
Yeah, that all makes a lot of sense. And you know, from my perspective, the transition seemed, you know, seamless, really. Um, I I know that it was in the works for a while, and you know, before COVID, but the purpose of the question really was exactly what you said, John, of how we were really in this time of just everything was all over the place. All of our lives were flipped upside down. And then you folks are also tasked with like managing this event that is a big deal, right? For both of you and your lives and your families and the firm and everyone who works there. So yeah, I think it probably could not have gone better, in my opinion. Or whatever that's
also
worth.
showed us like the resiliency of people. Like as you just said, Dena, our lives were completely flipped upside down. There's no one whose life wasn't radically changed. And yet, as a firm, as a country, we kept ticking. Yes, there were great hardships, and we have to just deal with those and make sure that we have the social safety nets, both in the firm and outside in the country, to deal with that. But it's amazing to me that we didn't all shut down and get in bed and put the covers over our head and said, wake us up when it's over. I mean, people kept working at an extraordinary levels of high performance. It was amazing to me.
Yeah, definitely. And I joke sometimes and say like I've had like the worst year ever, which I mean is a joke, but is also true. I've had like so many things happen in addition to COVID, and it's been so challenging. And I I think you're right in that the fact that I'm standing is good and is to be celebrated for all of us, right? You know,
Right.
we all have our own stuff. And
And not only are you standing, but like at least twice a week, someone mentions some project they're working on with you and, sings your praises. So,
I appreciate
I know you had COVID and all of these other issues, and you've dealt with them. And as you say, you're still standing and functioning at really high levels. That's the key. It's amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But work is a good way to keep yourself grounded sometimes when things are going crazy. At least I know what I'm doing here.
I
I
often
thought you were
think
going to
this is
say
my
hi.
therapy.
I've
I
used
know,
it.
John, you
Hi.
feel the same, right? Work is therapy sometimes that, as you say, it's something I can control. When I can't control other things in my life, I can control a document. And boy, sometimes I do my best doc review when I'm trying to put other things out of my mind.
Yeah, definitely. Um, so, you know, when we last spoke, so last July, we were in, if I recall correctly, in like the beginning phases of folks coming back into the offices. We were operating at a limited capacity, return was voluntary. Um, those things are still in place, as to my knowledge. I guess maybe I'm not so sure about the limited capacity piece. But I'm just wondering, you know, what things look like now from both of your perspectives in terms of, you know, working in the office, working from home. What are most people doing?
Yeah. So statistically, I would say most people are in a hybrid. They're coming in 1, 2, 3 days a week. We have some people who are there 5 days a week and have been since the day we reopened the offices. They like it. The only way they can work is being in the office. And so we have teams of people that are in the office every day. And then we have probably a similar number of people who have not stepped foot in the office since March of 2020, and everybody else in between. So, and it varies a little bit by office. Rochester has probably more people in the office on a daily basis than, say, Albany. So it's a little bit regional, and it might be a little bit demographic. The people coming to the office tend to skew a little older. People not coming to the office it's a generalization, to skew a little younger.
And Connie, I've been on the phone with the last couple of days with a bunch of different partners over a bunch of different things, as you know. But give Dena a preview for what you're up to in terms of next phase, because I think it's exciting. I was trying to gin people up in my conversations.
Yeah, so we're going to obviously, hopefully starting tomorrow, we're going to change the rules, relax the rules. If you're vaccinated and completed the survey, the mask goes away. We're going to allow people to use conference rooms. If they're unvaccinated people, we're going to ask to continue to socially distance. Unvaccinated people will have to leave their masks on. Gets a little trickier when you're talking about clients and visitors, but we're working that out. We'll still continue the essential business committee function of people checking to make sure they can bring clients in, at least for the short term, the next few weeks while we roll out the new rules. Exciting, there'll be no more limitations on inter-office travel. So people can start traveling the offices, which I think is hugely important. I think there's a real pent-up demand for people to get out and travel and see other people. I made my first trip this week to Rochester, or last week now, to Rochester, and it was great. To be honest, I was a little nervous, had a little minor panic attack at the thought of driving 3.5 hours by myself and being in a different city. And then I got as far as like Utica, and I was like, oh, wow, now I was excited. I was going to see this person and that person. So I think once people sort of get over that initial hesitation, and then we're going to try to do some events around the summer to get people together. We're very hopeful about the Otissaga event in Cooperstown.
Sure.
And we'll do some other events where we try to get people to come back on a voluntary basis over the summer to the office, just to try it out, to see that it's still safe, to get them over that hurdle, and in large part to deal with these stacks of paper that have accumulated everywhere. We've gotten really good at scanning the mail, and people have gotten really good about not having to print every piece of paper, but still we've somehow accumulated stacks of paper everywhere. So that's something we're going to try to do this summer, is clean that up.
Definitely. I mostly don't go into the office, and I mostly work from home. And every time I do, I have to steel myself because my office is just going to be a train wreck, and I know it. And there are a lot of attorneys who function with stuff around. I am not one of them.
Right.
I am a clean desk person. I put things away. I just it just doesn't work for me. If it works for you, that's great, but it doesn't for me. So I know every time I go, I'm going to spend like the first hour that I'm there sorting through things and just like dealing with papers and whatever's been left on my desk. So I can imagine the paper that's around other people's offices.
Right. And we're going to start like hopefully getting people to get used to a paperless system so that when they come to the office, they're confident that they don't need to go through that stack because they've paperless that's saved as a PDF into their file site matter. And so they can just come in and toss it. We're not quite there yet, but John, I know you've been like clean desk person forever. I've never seen a piece of paper on your desk.
I'm like Dena, but I must say that my home office was a pile of nothing worked. Everything was just junk on this desk in my basement, and I slowly, part of the sabbatical was to take it back, and one piece at a time, clean it to get things functioning again. Funny story, I called Doug Nash, who's my IT specialist for our family for the last 15 years, and I said, Doug, I want to buy a $100 inkjet printer. I need to know which one. And after Doug was done with me, I ended up with a, whatever this is, this color jet $600 can blow up Russia if we needed to device. But the point is now I have this high functioning desk, but Dena, it's the same thing. It was like cutting through the overgrown weeds of your yard to take it. You're taking it back. It had naturally, organically gone back to the woods, and you had to start cutting trees down and removing stumps and getting it back. But that's where we are. I would just say this, and I'll take a moment to say this to Connie, because I haven't, because we've had a lot of back and forth about the reopening. And I don't know what are in people's heads, but I will say this. I think a greater group than people afraid of sickness, that a greater group, that the hearts and minds, the critical mass that isn't the problem. The problem, I'll talk for myself. I don't want to go in. It's very convenient. I was just out watering my grass seed, come in, take a call with you, find people. I had to put the shirt on. I had a t-shirt on. I got swim trunks on right now. So the point is, I think you've got a massive group of people that it's fundamentally convenient to be at home. And so you've got to, on the other hand, I miss people. I miss them terribly. And so I'm willing to get over that inertia, which is to stay home in swim trunks or sweatpants and go in. I'm willing to do that if there's a reason to. And I don't mean a deposition. I mean people, right? So, but I don't see people when I go in. It's The Walking Dead. It's dystopia. It's out of a movie. And so we need people. It's like this, it's a chicken and the egg. You got to get people in, which will attract people. So I think the reason people, the critical mass people are people who, left to their own devices might stay away. They're not afraid of sickness. But if they're given a reason to go in, like, hey, it's a semi-full floor, or hey, there's a free lunch every Tuesday, or hey, there's a happy hour after work, or whatever. I don't know what the heck you do. But if Connie's working on these events that get people in, even if it was like a lottery, everybody, you win $100 if you're there that day. Well, I don't want to go in to win the $100, but I want to go in because I know people will be there and I miss the fellowship. And I think that's the bulk of the people that if we can get them thinking differently, no, they're not going to flip the switch and go in every day of the week, but they're going to go in Tuesdays and Thursdays because it's the lottery or the free lunch or my floor is almost full. Because I think people are thirsting for that connection, and they'll get over their angst and default setting of staying home if there's something to go into. It's just we're not there yet. So getting from, what I love is Connie's been managing this issue from deputy managing partner to now, and we're in the final stages of the last act. She managed the front end, from the beginning, and it's been fun to watch because she's done a fabulous job. And now comes, it's been really hard. Now comes the really hard part, getting people back in some balanced way. So it's interesting.
Yeah, someone said to me the other day, it's in retrospect, closing the offices down and moving people home is going to turn out to be the easy part. It's getting back into whatever the new normal is going to be far more challenging and a greater impact, because we really think, as do firms across the country, that this is both a retention issue of keeping talented people with the firm and a recruiting issue. If we can get it just right, not too hot, not too cold, but just in the middle, we're going to have something even more special than we have now, so that we keep the talented team we have now and we continue to attract really talented staff and attorneys, because people are going to have options. And we want to make sure that our option is very attractive to the broadest group of people.
That is so true. That is so true. Dena, what do you make of what I'm saying and Connie's saying? Is it resonating, or in other words, what will get you to, if you've been home most of the time as I have, what will get you to start coming in? Is it a safety issue that's keeping you home, or a convenience issue, or something else?
For me, it mostly is convenience, I guess, as you're saying. Not necessarily that I'm not afraid, right? But I feel like the risk is quite low in most cases in the office because, I'm in an office, right? And I can close my door if I need to, and people are usually, respectful of your space and those kinds of things. It's a convenience thing. It's a thing of feeling very productive at home, right? And also I find it easier at home to do things that I need to do. I'm not great at taking breaks, but I'm better at home of getting up for a minute and, doing something else for a second, which I think we all need to do for our mental health and for, good work product. And another piece too is there's usually not a whole lot of people in Albany, and the people that I work with regularly, many of them are not seated in Albany anyways. So it's not like if I was to go to the office, I would be seeing people that I don't talk to all the time anyways. So yeah, I get what you're saying. I think that's definitely part of it. I have said for a long time, and I think probably even in our last conversations, that I don't know how we go back to how it was at this point. And one of the things I was going to ask, right, is how you both see this moving forward in the future. I've seen things coming out about other firms that are requiring return to work, requiring attorneys to return on a full-time basis. I've also seen firms who are implementing a layered or staggered approach where, we'd like you to come in 1 day a week, and then after this date, we would like you to come in a couple days, whatever, or maybe a hybrid approach forever. I I struggle to think that a lot of the arguments in the past for why, for me, young attorneys need to always be present. We've functioned well from home for a very long time. So I feel like we've almost like proven ourselves that we can do this on some level for the long haul. I mean, certainly not, I don't intend to be home forever all the time. But some hybrid model would probably be, I think, the ideal situation for me. But
Yeah,
I don't know,
and
it's flexible. I don't.
Yeah, I think it's complicated by our platform a little bit, talking to a young partner and talking about, well, what's being lost in training or mentoring. And she said, well, you understand that everyone I work with, all the associates I work with, are not located in my office.
Mm-hmm.
So I might be training or mentoring. I'm doing it on Teams or a phone call anyhow, because I'm not there. She said, I can generally train and mentor young associates in my office, but as far as from a practice point of view, they're not there. So it's a little more complicated than the firm with 300 attorneys all in one place where they can say, okay, healthcare and human services PA meetings in person on Tuesday, we'll all get lunch together, we'll sit in a conference and we'll have lunch. Well, that's not where everyone's not in Albany or Buffalo or Syracuse. So it's a little bit more complicated and nuanced, but I do think we need to do something to try to encourage people to come back so that the people who are in the office and are most productive in the office get some psychic benefit of being in the office, and it's not this ghost town as John and I, have experienced. And so, got to put the chicken before the, chicken or egg, what's going to come first. But that's the challenge. And I did a call with a number of managing partners in the Albany area, including the managing director of the Albany office of Nixon. And their thing is they're not jumping first, because they think whoever jumps first is inevitably going to be the target of a lot of criticism. So they're going to sort of sit back and let things play out, encouraging people to come, but in a very soft way. And I thought that was an interesting perspective.
But Connie, couldn't you, because I think I'm with you 100%. And by the way, the answer to this question is we don't know. And this is going to be, I think Connie's taking over the running of the law firm is her first big challenge. Her second is going to be her imprint on this question you raised. Because it's going to be a highly strategic one, and she's still absorbing, which is exactly what, she's reading, she's up on everything you just talked about, and sharing it with small groups and getting conversations started. So we don't know. That's the bottom line. We didn't know a year, I did know that when this started, before any other firm was giving people, staff particularly, the flexibility to stay home, we said we did it, and we did it for safety. And also because we figured we could, because of our platform and the nature of the culture of the firm. And we were proven right. So long before the state said we had to, or other firms were doing it, we said, be safe, be home, whatever. And so we've always been out front on things. But Connie, your comment about working to help people get more comfortable coming back, that's the one side. Let me ask you this, though. Don't you agree? Isn't the right answer to Dena's question about can we go back to the way we were? Isn't the right answer, you have no plan to have us go back to the way we were?
No plan. I don't think, even if we did have a plan for people to come back 5 days a week, I think the number of resumes that would be out on the street the next hour, whether we're talking about legal assistants, paralegals, associates, partners. There was a partner from Dena, maybe you're familiar with them, John, maybe not, but Jones, Hacker, Murphy, which is a big Stuart Jones, Jim Hacker, big firm in the Albany area. And they are instituting a rule that everyone must be vaccinated and must return to the office 5 days a week. And I texted them and I said, just have them send their resumes to me, because you're going to have an empty office next week. I've known Jim Hacker from forever. And what are you thinking? But he, I just don't think that's going to happen now. There are people who think the pendulum could swing back. So we're really fortunate. None of our offices have an option, their leases are up. So we have, the bad news is we're not going to save money by downsizing our space. But the good news, it gives us a little breathing room to see if this sort of hybrid experiment works well, or if there's a pendulum swing the other way. We got 2 or 3 years before our leases start turning over. So that's a good thing from my perspective, because there is a view that this can't last, that we're in sort of a fantasy land right now, and that at some point business will go back to 5 days a week in person. I don't share that view necessarily, but I'm not confident enough in my view to say, yeah, that's never going to happen, because who knows?
Yeah, I think it's so hard to predict, and I think it's quite possible, because if you asked me in January of 2020 if I would work from home 5 days a week, I would have laughed at you.
Right.
Because I was like, I hate working from home. I never want to do it ever. And things have changed so much in that amount of time, right? Like, my background is different than the last time we spoke, because I literally moved to a place with an office because I couldn't work on my kitchen table anymore.
Right.
So, things have been so different. I also wonder if we will see a change again in the fall, when kids go back 100% to school, because I can imagine that there's a lot of people who are still struggling with childcare and having kids at home and those kinds of things.
There's a lot of people who have told me, look, I sent my children to school. It was disruptive because they were only gone 5 hours a day and I need to drive them both ways. But I'm really going to struggle again this summer because I can't find a summer camp that's as safe as school was during the school year. I can't find childcare. I'm nervous about bringing someone into my house. So you're right. I think, the headlines this morning are all filled with schools back reopening in September on a normal basis. I think that's a time where things will get better. Also, people struggling with healthcare issues with parents who are
Sure.
still a little in the nervous. So if we get a few months away of sort of relaxed rules as a country, and the CDC puts out some more relaxed guidance, I think we may see more normalcy in the fall. But John's right. We're not. I don't see us announcing that either in the summer or the fall we're going back to everybody in the office 5 days a week.
Yeah, and I would just say, regardless of what our policies are and what we do, it'll never be the same. It's a fascinating. Everything's changed forever in some way or another. We'll see what that way is, but it's people's technology proficiency, productivity, karma, mental health, physical health is now in play relative to home versus work. And, it's on both sides. Some people need to be in the office. Some people need to be home more. So it's finding that balance that's going to be interesting. Let me throw in one last piece, Dena, is that we haven't touched on, but it's related, which is layer on to that complexity of thinking that Connie has to deal with, layer on hierarchy. Now, we've had a philosophy, whether you've seen it or not, of doing our best to create the flattest possible management structure. We've tried to strip away, I'm the partner, you're the associate, or the associate saying, I'm the lawyer, you're the staff. We've tried to create a team collaborative mentality, non-attorney professionals. Connie, brought in Joanne, who was one of the best ever, but really try to create a flat environment. Okay, so now take that philosophy of flat environment and wash it through the last 18 months. Connie and I were shocked at the Southern firms in the US law net, or in various networks that we were a part of. But some of the firms that were, partners can do what they want. Associates need to risk their lives coming in, 4 days a week, and staff need to risk their lives coming in 5 days a week. And we've even said on calls, how can you get comfortable with that? How can you treat two people, human beings, differently when safety, their safety or their parents or their children or whatever, it was phenomenal to us. We couldn't believe it. So now, layer, and we've treated everybody the same up until now. So now throw in the nuance of, is the job function, you got the partner, you've never been able to control a partner's schedule, right? It's always been part of being a partner is I come in when I want. Now, the associates are watching. If you insisted on all the associates coming in and the partners weren't there, what kind of law firm is that? What kind of work, what type of business entity we're building is that? That's Bush League. That's terrible. Now, if you mandate the partners come in, that's weird too. That's how you end up with, you're going to have to be flexible for the associates. Now, you've dealt with that. Now, what do you do with the staff? The staff have to come in and sit around with opened offices and no lawyers in there? Because why? because their job requires it. Well, we kind of proved it didn't. So maybe we need less of them, but it's like 6-dimensional chess that Connie's playing on this one. And it's going to be fun because, she's getting input from a lot of people she's reading, and we'll figure it out together as a firm. She's doing surveys. You're going to be answering stuff and, getting information. And all I can tell you, what I know from 20 years, it's going to be innovative. It's going to be inclusive of everybody's feelings, and it's going to capture the widest array of differing views, because that's how we got here. We cast a net at this law firm that captures the widest array of people and their talents and gets the most out of them. And that's what this ultimate policy is going to be, because that's how we roll. So I'm excited about it, because I think it's going to differ. I think, as Connie says, it's going to differentiate us, because there's knucklehead firms mandating things. Really? Is that what you're doing? Going back to it's 1950s again. Let's make it, that's not wise. Take advantage of disruption. That's what's gotten us here. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting because we also don't ever really know what's coming down the pipeline, right? Like I listened to a news podcast recently, and they had a epidemiologist on who was talking about herd immunity, and they were saying that because less people have been getting vaccinated than they expected, that and the more contagious versions of coronavirus that we're seeing that are mutating and coming from other places, they were saying that it's possible that we could deal with COVID for a generation, right? Like we could be seeing spikes forever. Like, it might not.
Don't throw away your masks. I think the rule is don't throw away your masks. Keep that hand sanitizer in the kitchen cupboard, because we don't know. I hope not, but I don't think anybody knows.
You never know. I mean, maybe not so much in less densely populated areas like, Albany or Syracuse or, but New York City, places like that where there's so many people in small areas all the time. It's interesting. So you just don't know. It's how do you plan when you have no idea what's going to happen? Yeah. Just as I mentioned vaccines, how is the firm handling vaccines?
So we're just encouraging, we have no mandated vaccine policy. We're encouraging people to get vaccinated, but leaving it to their personal choice and consultation with their physician. I noticed that Skadden just announced yesterday that if you want to go to their office, you need to be either vaccinated or produce a COVID negative test that's less than 48 hours old. So that means if you want to come every day, you almost have to do a 5-day-a-week COVID test. So I know there's some at-home COVID tests now, whether they're going to accept that. We're not doing that. We're just encouraging. But we are going to tell you, if you want to take your mask off, you have to answer a survey, because we want to, again, appeal to the broad range of people, and we want everyone to be comfortable. It's one thing if you're going to Target and you're in and out in 10 minutes and you're not sure if everyone's really being honest about their vaccination status. It's another thing if you're going to come and sit in an office for 8 to 12 hours a day. You want to make sure. And so we're going to ask people to fill out that survey or continue to wear their masks. I think there are going to be not just a few people, Dena, like you, who will continue to wear their masks even though they are vaccinated, because they feel safer that way. And so we're going to encourage people to do that if that's what makes them feel comfortable.
Yeah, and in terms of that, also, what I will note is that I thought was interesting was going through my errands. I think I only saw 2 or 3 people without masks. Most people were still wearing them, which I thought was really interesting.
Right.
So,
yeah, I think a lot of people are going to wear them at least for the while, whether it's a week or 2 weeks or a month. I don't know, but yeah. I see a lot of people around town with masks on also.
There's so many parts of this that we never could have predicted, but the one that I find interesting is how judgy, whether you're wearing one or not. I mean, there's all sorts of emotional and personal reaction to, and good and bad. And I'm as judgy as anybody else. Somebody before vaccine, somebody without a mask, you're like, it's as if they had a gun in their hand.
Right, right.
It's so
Well, I
weird.
think the part is like you wearing a vaccine is what protects me, or you wearing a mask protects me, not really you. So when you don't wear a mask, now I'm at risk. I think that's where the judgment came from, and that's where it's still the hard part is, you know, to protect yourself. You got to make sure that other unvaccinated people wear masks. So it's hard. It is, John. It gets very judgmental and it's very personal, which is why 50% of the country is still unvaccinated as of this morning.
And then how did politics get involved in that?
Oh my gosh, I don't
I was
know.
gonna say,
But it's good to know we can be bribed because I saw where the Ohio vaccination rates have gone up dramatically because they have a $5 million lottery and a separate lottery for high school kids to get free tuition at an Ohio State school for 4 years. Once a
Wow.
week. And the 16 and 17-year-old vaccination rate in Ohio skyrocketed once they announced that scholarship potential. Think of it. I mean, what the heck? Usually these young kids, it's not a political belief or a religious belief. It's a invincibility factor, right? They're all invincible. Hey, but I'll go sit in the high school gym and get a couple of shots if I get a shot at free tuition. So
How about
Yeah.
that?
it can be bribed.
That's interesting. I never knew that. I didn't hear about that. That's, yeah. So I guess in just our last few minutes, I think the question that I'll ask is, well, I'll preface it by saying, last time we all spoke, we talked a lot about the challenges the firm was facing. A lot of those have gotten better. Like we talked, well, in my observation, right? We talked about like the financial impact of COVID on the firm and on people working at the firm. We talked about working from home, coming back, all these different challenges that we were facing. And I guess what I would like to know is, what do each of you think is the next big challenge? What is the next thing on the horizon that you think we need to grapple with, or that you think might shake things up a little bit, or what do you think it is, if anything?
But I think it's how we're going to come back. That's certainly the number one challenge. And our number two challenge is probably technology and keeping up with technology and keeping people proficient with the technology we do have. Again, we get some people that are all over it and do very well with every time we change something on a tech side. And then we have other people that really struggle with it. But I think that's going to be a challenge because we're not going back on that for sure. And neither is anybody else. So the pace of technological change is just going to accelerate. And even with this firm within the next year, the number of initiatives that Jeff Keane has going in the next 12 months is almost mind-boggling.
I agree with those. And I would just add one other that I've been thinking about a lot. Maybe the sabbatical triggered it. I've always been kind of an old soul, so I'm only 58, but I feel like I'm about 70. And when I was 15, I felt like I was 25. So I would add to Connie's list the transfer of the leadership and overall ownership of the law firm to a new generation of Xers and below. And because it's going from a boomer group, Connie and I are boomers, to Xers, Ys, Zs, millennials. And that's a big shift. And if you look at what an Xer and a Yer and a Zer and a millennial has been through, starting with 9/11, you guys have gotten the crud kicked out of you in a way that, we didn't live with a war. Boomers are a result of World War II, and Vietnam was a blip, but we didn't live with a war. You've lived with a version of World War II in like 4 or 5 different forms, including now the biblical, everything but locusts have come, in terms of this pandemic. But seriously, if you think about a decade-long Gulf War, 9/11, the 08 financial crisis, where we forget, but there was a feeling like banks were going to fail. Your $10,000 in your bank account was going to go away, literally. And now this pandemic, and then Trump for 4 years, not trying to be political, and then this pandemic. You guys have been, it's like a ping pong ball, been knocked around, and now, God knows, I can't even get a fix on your philosophy as a generation. Can't even, and I'm pretty good at getting a fix on people. I can get a fix on a boomer, and I can work with that. But this is like, I don't know what you're going to be like, and you have a lot of reasons to all be indifferent, but it's been a lot. And now this firm is set up for generational transfer by partnership agreement law, by culture, by effort. And what happens in the next, Connie is positioning us in the next 5 or 6 years to turn it over, and not to the 55-year-old, to the 45-year-old, And so that's going to be interesting to watch, because you got a lot of families supporting their families and making financial commitments, whether it's college tuition or taking care of the parents or something in between. So there's a lot at stake, and that'll be. I'm excited about it, but I'm also it's very unknown to me. I don't know, Connie, how you feel about like your level of confidence that we got all that figured out yet.
I'm confident that we will get it figured out, and I'm confident we have the right group. We have a really talented group, but we're far from having it figured out. And in part, that group is going to have to figure it out because they're the ones that are going to own the firm. But it's not only on the management of the firm, the number of people retiring or moving to Star Partner in the next 5 years, the opportunities that are there are really exciting for people to move up and take over huge practices and huge client relationships. But obviously it's going to have to be done with a lot of intentionality, which is all the new rage word, because there's a lot at stake here. As John said, there are a lot of people like yourself and like the two of us who are counting on this firm to continue to be successful. So we want to make sure we do it right. That is going to be a huge challenge.
Yeah, certainly. And I also just want to add crippling student loan debt to John's list of challenges. I mean, I personally not had to pay my student loans since March of last year, and I think about it almost every day that will start again, and it's substantial sums of money. It's stressful, and I also I'm hopeful that we will see the racial and social justice reckoning that we really need in our country, and I think that will impact all of the practice of law and will impact how companies function and every part of what we're talking about.
It's true. Those are two really good ads, don't you think, Connie? That we didn't deal with that, and where we are with the tumult of social justice issues.
When I went to law school, you could work in a summer and make enough to pay your tuition. People got loans, but $5,000 a year, and you were able to pay them back. Interest rates were 15%. Some people were able to put some money in the bank and make a lot of interest to help cover their student loan. But, now with law school is now like $70,000 a year. I mean, it's a ridiculous amount of money. And hopefully the government, Biden has some programs. Hopefully they'll figure out a way to more rationalize student loans. Why are student loan interest rates, 3 times the interest rates for other consumer loans? There's a lot the government could do there to bring down the rate, which would make repayment far, far easier. There's a lot to be done on that. And social equity, every time I get hopeful that we're going to have the reckoning we need and we're going to see the changes that we need, and then something else happens that discourages me. But I'm trying to stay hopeful, and I think it's the young people. Like, I know John and I have this discussion all the time about our children. Our children have been the best thing for us because they've really opened my eyes to things that I really didn't see. And there's nothing like having a 20 or 30 something year old child explain the true facts of life to you, and open my eyes on a lot of different things, change my view on a lot of things, especially with COVID, because we all spent lots of time together.
Definitely. Well, thank you both so much. I really appreciate each of you taking the time, and it's been good to chat with both of you. It's been a long time, I think.
Yeah, it was great to see you.
Too.
All right.
I know you have all sorts of, and thank you, Dena. I know you have all sorts of talents and roles you play in your practice, but if podcast moderator is ever on a short list, I urge you to pursue it because you're very good.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. I told you after the first one, like, Oprah Winfrey Move Over, the ease and the comfort with which you go from topic to topic and ask questions is pretty good.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I am naturally chatty. So I guess it works in my favor
Well, you
here.
know what? But that isn't what you are. You're not naturally chatty. You're maybe a little chatty, but you're also naturally curious.
Yeah,
And so
that's also.
you ask good questions and you listen, and that's not easy for moderators sometimes. So
Yeah.
good for you.
Well,
Good job.
thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay.
All
Talk
right,
to you
have a good one.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.